Good morning and welcome to Vision in Action Live. Today we have a presentation on working your lifelong fulfillment plan and a discussion with Kelly Kellem, College Admissions and Funding Strategist. Welcome, Ms. Kellem. I'm Jim Boswell, your host and the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life. Today's presentation is on working your lifelong fulfillment plan, which covers your fulfillment plan using research, testing, experimentation, closed loop, continuous loop operations, and occasionally thinking outside the box. Let's see how this works. In the research arena, you're always going to be faced with the fact that you don't know everything you want to know at any given particular point in time. And your research should correspond to your priority projects at any point in time. So that's okay. This is a normal state of life. Things will also change while you're, living your life and setting your priorities. So you're in a position to need to refresh your knowledge and vision. Things do change in even fairly mature disciplines. You don't want to rely on a single authority as you look for credible point solutions. You want to look for some convergence and validations from multiple authorities. So if you get two PhDs who've done research and they're coming up with very similar conclusions, then you're accomplishing this convergence on a truth that you may want to base a decision on. Authoritative resources, to recap, can be found in books, libraries, certainly online, through podcasts, lectures, and trainings. You can find hosted activities in and out of group formats. Many of them could be free. And you can find formal and informal continuing education and certification. And I do want to emphasize that you need to focus on certification and credentialed experts. Secondhand books, publications, and sport, hobby, and activity gear all makes it really easy to experiment. You don't have to spend a lot of your capital on these kinds of things. So a research example I'd like to point out to you is if we look at the book Abundance by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler, our attentions is demanded, they maintain that our attention is commanded by flight or fright reactions that are normal to human beings, that bad news always trumps good news in our immediate attention span. And it is, in fact, a survival imperative. It's something we all live with. So that means that negative information tends to be the preponderant information that we have available to us and exceeds the positive information that's also being developed over time. Exponential progress, which Mr. Diamandis likes to talk about, in critical areas actually leads to abundance, which is not something we would normally assume. So to validate abundance, how would we go about doing that? Well, we can do that by looking at Steven Pinker's talk on TED and Factfulness by Hans Rowling, where they really look at illiteracy, improvements in illiteracy, in poverty, in infant death from multiple resources. So we can say that, at least Peter Diamandis, his proposal is rational and probably pretty well fact-based and supported by other authorities. This is a good way to think of research on a personal basis. So if we're testing and experimenting, what does that mean? Well, once you've set your goals and you've set, your action plan, you actually got to go out there and give it a try. One of the problems with giving a try is setting your expectations too high and getting emotionally involved in them. You need to kind of expect that you're going to do this and you're going to do it in whatever intrigues you. You might do it alone, you might do it in a group, you might do it with a friend. And how or else are you going to really know unless you go try these things? So let's say you go try. Well, how does it feel to you? You don't want to let logic or prejudice discourage your experimentation or the results. You want to keep your expectations as realistic as possible and not get too attached initially to the results that you think you observe. Keep what works and discard what's left. The negative and neutral needs to go away. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed by the amount of things that are trying to compete for your attention. So we want to keep the things that are absolutely positive and then feed that back to our goals, objectives, and planning process. You want to be patient. For some of these things, it's going to take a little time. You may be on a learning curve, which will take time to get up to a point of competency. And it gets better from here. And your ability to do this gets much better over time as you actually do the experimentation and testing. So continuous closed loop improving. What you want to do in reevaluating your plans and exercising your plans is close the loop. Only you know you, so you own this process and all the results thereof. Other people can speak for you, but they're not going to necessarily know what's right for you. So your brainstorming leads to experimentation. It leads to results from trying things, and it informs your future initiatives as you grow into the lifelong fulfillment development process. It'll help you develop goals, test your plans, measure and feedback the results, and adjust your vision accordingly. It will help you work the process every day. So in that case, sometimes it's making friends, learning something new, enjoying the results and the progress that you observe. And it's iterative. It's often around critical life events, especially, things like graduation, career decisions, marriage, children, moving, death, retirement, and so on. So don't think that the plan you set at age 22 is the plan you're going to be working on at 45 or the retirement plan you'll be looking at between 60 and 65. Another thing is to stay focused. Use the Pareto rule, return on investment, timing, and diminishing points of returns so that you're not wasting your effort. Stay focused on the top priority items and work those first. And early success will show that your vision and goals are doable. And that'll kind of feed back to you a positive aspect about, well, it sounds like I've got the right set of goals. I'm doing the right set of activities, and we're doing fine for now. So think also outside the box. Many of the solutions you'll be seeking initially will be things that are well documented, pretty common to all individuals, but occasionally you're going to be wanting to think about other ways. Occasionally, at some occasion, you're going to maybe think about having children. One of the things to do before you make that critical decision is take a look at what that cost structure is and how well that goal fits in with your financial state. And is the timing right? Based on 3 authoritative resources, we come up with a figure of $233,000 on average before college just to raise and rear and educate children. And here's some experts. Tom Van Ripper of Forbes talked about this. The Journal of Marriage and Family talks about it. And how much does it cost to raise a child in the United States in 2021 by Ms. Chepkanovska. So there's 3 authoritative resources. And it's something you might really want to look into before taking the leap. Another thing that will be of consequence to many is the decision to go to college or a professional school or some other route to making a living. So here we use an example of taking the licensed electrician route with 2020 U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Basically, they make an average of about $62,000 a year. 80,000 would be the maximum end of that range and about 43,000 the minimum. And electricians are only 1% of the 39 million individuals employed in 2020. So if you look at that, we can conclude that it's certainly a high demand career, There's limited supply, limited number of people doing it. It does require a license, and you have to be educated in some form or fashion to attain that license. But the training is relatively limited, and there's no college expenses to look forward to. Time period on this is probably about a year. Very different than a 4-year college degree. Let's take a look at some others. So another is outside the box. All of us talk about transportation, carbon in the atmosphere, and a warming climate. So one thing to do is reduce your transportation costs, because that reduces carbon emissions if you're driving a regular automobile and doesn't further exacerbate global warming. So you can stop driving outright. But how are you really going to do that? Would you just drive less? Would you use leased auto services? Maybe you want to look at, if you're a city person, maybe you just want to get a bicycle. At $375 for a bicycle, that's adequate. It'll last 5 years, and then you just get a new bike later. Pretty cheap and certainly fuel efficient and certainly emissions efficient. An e-bike, not quite as efficient because you got to charge it. But the total cost over 5 years is only about $3,400, and you can get a new one after 5 years. The monthly mass transit on average might be $65, or you might be doing taxi rides. That might fit you if you're less athletic and don't want to go the other routes. Another DIY thing is upcycling, and that's a good solution for creative people. It's an interesting thing to look at. So go to upcyclethat.com if you're interested in pursuing that outside the box strategy. So to recap, you can do research, testing, experimenting, prioritizing, and out-of-the-box thinking. These will all be appropriate at some point in your planning and execution process. You can do flexible, closed-loop, continuous improvement, personal development over an entire lifetime. And when we talk about an entire lifetime, the critical years of that are somewhere between 20 and 22 and 60 and 65. So you can go to the website lifelongfulfillment.com for everything, and including this Working Your Plan newsletter, which speaks to specifics. Now's the time in our program when we entertain perspectives of point solution experts and those people that are leading self-directed lives. Today we have with us Ms. Kelly Kellem. She holds a BA at San Jose State College, and she's owner of Kelly Kellem Consulting, and she does college admissions and funding strategies. Welcome to Vision in Action Live, Ms. Kellem.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm so happy to be here and have the opportunity to talk with your guests a little bit.
Well, we're really eager to have your information for our guests. So I did that introduction, but I'm sure there's more to it. Maybe there's some things you would like to fill in so that people understand your expertise and your experience a little better.
Sure. I am a former teacher. Currently I am a financial coach. I'm also a step parent. And this aspect of my business really grew out of a desire to find a better way to send my stepkids to college without them coming out with a huge amount of debt, or without us going into debt to do that. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot in the process of over almost 10 years of going through this. And what I have discovered is that there is definitely a way to pay less for college and to do it with as little debt as possible. But it doesn't begin at the end of the process. It doesn't begin in a student's senior year. It begins all the way back in the freshman year of high school, or even 7th and 8th grade. But once you do that and you find the right fit school, got your preparation done, it is very possible to go to college for less money with less stress, because the college process is definitely one that is stressful for parents and for the student. Right. And also, most of the people that work with me all the way through high school or from sophomore year forward save an average of $80,000 over the 4 years of college. So that's a real benefit. And so I'm on a mission to help families do that.
That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. So why don't we start with a basic question that the audience would be asking, and that is, in talking the lifelong fulfillment strategies, we spend a lot of time acquainting people with, data from Department of Labor, the census and so forth, that goes directly to the issue of education really drives incomes, and incomes drive your ability to support and realize your dreams because you've got the resources to do so. But not everybody has the same desires. Not everybody knows, I have to admit, when I was in my junior high years, I didn't know where I was headed. So maybe you could sort through some advice about, should I be looking for college? Should I not? Is it compulsory for me to be happy? Whatever you have by way of that to tell us.
Well, first and foremost, college is not a necessity. Yes, you are correct. It is definitely something that gives you a leg up. Most people who attend college do end up making more, even their first year out of college, than somebody who did not go the college route.
Mhm.
You make much more over your lifetime if you do go to college and have a college degree. However, college isn't right for everybody. One shouldn't feel that they have to go to college. And I know when I was growing up, the idea was you have to go to college. And I was what we call a first generation student. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college at the time that I went to college. So today we still have families that are students who are first generation in their family to go to college. And a lot of times they get a lot of pressure to go.
Mhm.
And if they're not somebody who does well in school, if they're not somebody who enjoys studying, but they're someone who works well with their hands, maybe has a trade in mind or has a different skill that doesn't lend itself well to college, then there's nothing that says that somebody has to go to college to be successful or to be happy in life, because success has many different definitions. We all know that.
Right.
And lifetime fulfillment really is a definition of success as opposed to making money. Making money is important, but that's not the only reason to go to college.
Right.
Now, going back to your question about how does somebody approach this when they're in seventh and eighth grade and have no idea what they want to do, that's a really good question. I didn't even know coming through my senior year of high school what I wanted to do. I think my freshman year of college, I was a little unclear about what I wanted to do
Mhm.
when I grew up. But, someone in seventh and eighth grade has an idea of, do I even like school? Do I do well with math and science, or do I do better in language and English and history? That might give an indication of which path they're going to take once they do look at college.
Right.
So when I'm starting to look to work with a student in seventh or eighth grade, I'm saying, where are your core capabilities? Let's look at that. We can do one of two things. If you have an interest in science, we can try to build your capability there. Or if that's really not an interest for you, we build you a curriculum going into the end of high school that enhances what your core abilities and interests are. So
Mhm.
that students don't have to sit there and say, I have to pick a major, know exactly what I want to do when I'm in seventh or eighth grade.
Right.
That makes no sense.
Right. That sounds good. And if I remember correctly from high school, you do get chances to influence which way your studies go using the elective process, right?
Very much so. Very
Okay.
much so. And I love to sit down with students and even do some exploration through the elective process and say, okay, you think you're interested in this, your school offers a pre-vet program. Even in
Right.
high school, there's a veterinary class or an animal studies class. Let's get you in that. Let's see what you think of that. Okay, that didn't work out. next year, let's try this business class over here. I'm currently working with a student right now where we went through this same process.
Uh-huh.
And he's trying some business classes this next year. And we'll see exactly where he falls out. Nothing wrong with trying something in high school and finding out it's not what you want to do
Mhm.
before you spend a lot of money in college to find out it's not what you want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's assume we have somebody that's, a college candidate, shall we say. So what preparations are appropriate? How do you help them through applying, all the disciplines that you bring to bear? How does that go?
Well, very similar to the start is very similar to what we just talked about. I sit down with them, I understand what they enjoy. I understand where their skills lie, and we try to build a curriculum. Once we've done that, we also look at what kinds of activities might be right for this student. It is not a situation today where students need to try to do every activity under the sun and try to be the team captain, the president of the club, start a new club, do all of these things. They really should take a deep dive into something they really enjoy, maybe do two different activities. And if one isn't panning out for them, go deeper into the one that they really love and try to find a way to be a leader. And leadership doesn't always mean being the captain or the president. There are other ways to lead. But we work on the activities. And a lot of times I also have students do what some people call them passion projects, some people call them capstones, but some kind of an activity that really makes them stand out, gets to who they are. Maybe that's working with an animal rescue and doing a fundraiser for an animal rescue.
Mhm.
Maybe it is starting a nonprofit to help raise money for women overseas who have come through domestic violence situations. There can be a number of things. You can do research with a college or university in the scientific arena, but something that helps them dig deeper into, I want to say, a value that they have
Mhm.
and still gives them the opportunity to show a college what they can do on that college campus. How could they take their skills and apply it to something that might enhance the college or enhance the community around them? The other side of it is, of course, most people have heard about the standardized testing and how it is coming back into requirement. It's now becoming a requirement again for most of the colleges, to the dismay of many students, I will say. So making sure that they're being prepared for that testing. And I have students who just spent a lot of time preparing for the SAT. It's a good thing I had them already taking the test, because Illinois is not going to be doing the SAT after next January, after next December. They're going to move over to the ACT, which is a completely different type of test.
Mhm.
So it's really important to find out what works for you, be prepared for it in advance. And then I also work with students on college interviewing, a little bit on the interviewing process. I encourage them to find internships or do informational interviews, job shadows, so that they can really know what kind of a job they're looking at if
Right.
they want to, really invest time and money and energy in a potential career. I also work with them on their college essays. Having been a teacher at the high school level, that was something I was doing even as a teacher, was working with students on their essays.
Mhm.
The key thing is the way you fill out the application, and especially the activities portion of the application, the essay, and then also finding the right fit college. To me, that is the most important thing. And that is a journey that it can take 6 months to a year to find the right fit colleges for a student when they need to apply.
I see. Okay. So let's move on and talk about this college choice scenario. You know, I remember facing it also as a young man. And I had a lot of help because, like yourself, my mother was a teacher and very committed to being prepared to go and that sort of thing. I remember visiting colleges as part of that, as like a junior in high school or so. Maybe you can carry that forward with what you're doing with your clients.
Absolutely. I find that college fit is key not only for the student being successful and happy in college and not wanting to change schools in the middle of their college career, but also in saving money on college. And here's why. If you are the right fit for a college and that college is also the right fit for you, they are more likely to want to give you what we call merit money, merit scholarships, and other scholarships. They will find a way to make it attractive for you to go to their college. And that, of course, decreases the college bill in the long run. That's part of how I help families save an average of $80,000 by getting them into the right fit college. To do that, I spend a lot of time with the student, really trying to understand who they are outside of school. Are they somebody that just loves being near the mountains? Are they somebody who really wants to be in a city center like downtown Chicago and maybe wants to go to, Northwestern because they like being in that area of Chicago? Or do they want to go to University of Colorado at Boulder because they are interested in some jobs that are in that area or are interested in being in that environment? So I get to understand the student. I also take a look at what they're interested in studying and which schools are the best in that particular major. A lot of times families want to choose the school and then worry about the major. And that's really backwards. You really
Mhm.
need to figure out what you're majoring in and what schools fit your personality, your learning style, and also have that major and will also work within your budget. So that's why I say it can take 6 months to a year looking at schools or just trying to understand. They go to a school that's not even one of the ones that they're thinking of, but they go to a nearby school and say, I really don't want a big school. I really want that one-on-one attention that you get from a smaller school.
Right.
Or I really want to go to a school where I can get a good internship in a medical area. So then we look for schools that are close to medical centers where they can get an internship and possibly get into a pre-med major or a medical school following college. So
Mhm.
those are some of the things that I look at. I really say it has to be a good fit for the student's personality, their learning style, and also their learning aptitude and their the family budget. And when I say learning aptitude, a lot of schools are requiring test scores and grades that are not even 4.0 grades, or they're requiring perfect test scores for SAT or ACT. Not everybody is going to succeed in a school that has that academic standard. So we,
Right.
we pick something that's right for the student.
Right. Okay. So then we come to the all important people in this, and I imagine the parents, after they get over the shock of it all, become a pretty big component of this process. Maybe you can share some of that with the audience.
Of course, the parents are really my clients because, and this is really a family thing. I work with their students, but I also work with them. And much as parents cannot, one can't succeed as a parent without the other. If you've got a two-person family, two-person parent unit, uh, I don't succeed completely without the parents and vice versa.
Mhm.
It is a dual process here. So I actually can take some of the stress off the parents by being the one to say, these are the deadlines. This is what you need to do and by when. And I can hold them accountable to that. But I do need the parents to support me in that. And I do need the parents to say, hey, have you gotten this project done for Kelly? Or wait a minute, I think Kelly said that you have a meeting right now. Are you prepared for that meeting? You're sitting in front of the TV. And that's happened a lot, by the way, where parents have had to remind kids that we had meetings. But the other thing is that picking the right school, understanding the budget, helping even pick a major is a, a team decision. That is not something that is done in a vacuum, especially when it comes to the money aspect of funding college.
Right.
Parents have to be part of that discussion, and that discussion should really take place early in the student's high school career. I can't tell you how difficult it is on the kids, the parents, and myself when a family comes to me and says, my student is dead set on this school. How can we get him or her into that school, and how are we going to pay for it? That conversation really needs to happen well before a student has started doing college visits. And that's part of where it's a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
And even picking the major, a lot of times parents want to pick a major based on what they know is going to set their student up for financial success.
Sure.
As parents, we all have that in mind. I've even done it with my stepkids. However, we also have to factor in, is that something that your student even likes? I talked with a young lady 2 days ago who went all the way through college as an accounting major, did not like it, did it because it was something that another family member had done. And she thought, well, that's a good way to make money. It seems like a good job. Didn't like it and changed careers entirely midway through college, but
Mm-hmm.
she was still getting this accounting degree. And now she's in financial services, but has nothing to do with her accounting degree.
Right. Right. Uh, and I guess that does happen where even with the best laid plans, things happen and people change their minds.
Well, that's true. We do want to set them up for success going into college, but the reality is that something like 60%, I think is the latest figure, of students change their major in college. Now, if we do that, if we do everything the right way, they're just changing their major, say within the business realm. They go from accounting to a finance major, or they go from accounting to a business management major.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ideal thing. However, when you have somebody go from, I want to be a doctor, to, I really think I want to be a teacher, that's huge. That's a huge change. And sometimes it does mean changing schools as well. And that's extremely costly.
Right. Okay. So what are the things that families need to be leery of in terms of things that, deadlines seem to be a part of this pretty prominently, but what other mistakes are possible that they really need to be aware of and to try and avoid?
Well, we already talked about starting too late. It
Mm-hmm.
really needs to be something that is started no later than the beginning of the sophomore year of high school. Better to start in seventh or eighth grade, because then the student is taking the right classes to get into the more advanced classes in high school, if that's something that they have the aptitude to do and the desire to do. But a lot of times parents get into and students get into high school and don't really look at that until the junior year of high school. They don't think about what classes are needed.
Right.
And I will be honest, I love college counselors. I love the high school college counselors. They are so overwhelmed. They can't take the time to really go through all of this with the students. They sit down with the kids and say, hey, what do you think you want to do? They don't do it quite that abruptly, but there is an over reliance on the high school counselor
Mm-hmm.
to get them through the college program and to tell them what they really need to know. And these college counselors are not in a position to do that for every student. The national average right now is that each college counselor has between 450 and 500 students that they have to try to serve. And there's a lot more to their job description than just prepping them for college. So we, really an over reliance on the high school is a big one, a real big one. That along with not starting early enough. The other I mentioned is talking about budget and talking about what kind of college to go to long before the student starts visiting colleges.
Right.
And then the other thing, and I'm finding this to be the biggest issue right now, is that we as parents think we know what it takes to get into college, especially if we went to college or went to a, a well respected university. The
Mhm.
reality is that has all changed
Oh,
big time.
yeah.
And I learned that with my first stepdaughter. She was going to go to Purdue, and we were looking at some other options to bring the cost down. And really, her going to Purdue was the most cost effective option she had at the time. And I learned some do's and don'ts. So, understanding that things have really changed and that the parents really, at this point, do need some outside guidance because between the testing and those schools that are still test optional, which ones do you tell the test for? Which
Right.
ones do you not really reveal the test for? Why do you want to look at certain majors today? Today, a psychology major actually has more job opportunities than some other majors. If you get into a psychology major and you don't want to do just psychology, you have a lot of other ways you can go because
Mhm.
psychology is so important. But if
Right.
you're a finance major, you may be a little locked in terms of being able to use your skills and your degree.
Right.
So parents understanding that is really important, and also understanding how to fund college.
Right.
I mean,
So, obviously scholarships, obviously family money, things like that, gifts, whatever, uh, help to get these kids through college and graduated. Do many of them consider, working as part of that along the way? Do they get forced into that?
I think many are forced into it. The good news is that colleges do offer many students the opportunity to work on campus, whether
Mhm.
it be work study where they can actually put their wages toward their college tuition, or they can keep that money as their pocket money because there's always something that comes up that kids need, uh, or a late night snack, whatever it is. But I do find that many students have to work either during college or work full time in the summers between semesters.
Right.
I do also see a lot of students who are taking out student loans, and the good news is that the student loan allotment has changed. You're only allowed to take out between about $28,000 as a student. I think it's a little higher than that. Well, I know it's a little higher than that as a graduate student,
Right.
but they're not allowing students to take out $150,000 worth of student loans through the federal government.
Right.
There are still private loans, but most students have to get a cosigner for that.
Right.
I do see a lot of families who think that the student loans are going to be forgiven long term. And as both a consultant and as a financial coach, I really think we need to be cautious about believing that that is going to be the long term hope at this point. At the moment, student loan forgiveness is having some challenges through the Supreme Court. So I think we need to plan that whatever loans are taken out are going to have to be paid for by the student or by the parent. And then if things change, so much the better. But we need to plan worst case scenario. I'm currently talking with a family that is planning to take out $250,000 for their student to go to a college, and they have nothing to put into that at the moment. So I'm really cautious about people taking out large loans, knowing that the amount their monthly payment on that is probably going to be about $2,500.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough.
Yes.
That's for sure tough. Okay. Well, this is really intriguing, and I'm glad you're out there doing this for the public at large. I think we need more of this, as you indicate. Are there any wrap-up comments you'd like to make, or any tie-ins to lifelong fulfillment, which I think we've introduced to you, that you'd like to offer to the audience?
Well, I do, one of the obvious things with lifelong fulfillment is education is part of it, or it can be part of it,
Mhm.
but it also involves a lot of uh, things from your personal enjoyment. And I think I mentioned already that yes, lifelong fulfillment is a lot more than just the standard definition of success that means making money. That's important. But lifelong fulfillment brings to it a whole bunch of components,
Mhm.
and there has to be a balance there. As for things that I can offer the audience in terms of wrap up on what I do want to encourage families to reach out to people, not just people who've had students go to college, but reach out to people who have a lot of knowledge of the behind the scenes, what happens when a student submits an application, what happens during that process, what
Yeah.
happens during the financial aid process and determination of who gets how much money and from where, whether it be myself or someone else. That kind of a conversation is definitely helpful. I do offer a lot of free webinars. I offer a free consultation, even if all I do is set somebody on the right track. And I think that's super important for families to be willing to reach out to someone with that type of knowledge.
Okay. And so where can people reach you again if they need to get
Well,
in touch?
my email address is kelly@yourcollegemoneycoach.com. I can also be reached via phone at 847-997-1449.
Well, thank you, Kelly. This has been very interesting and very different. I'm glad you were here to help us acquaint people with the challenge.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. It's my pleasure. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Yes, and we look forward to seeing you again sometime.
I hope so. That would be wonderful.
Thanks again, Kelly.
Thank you.
So I want to thank our guest today, Ms. Kelly Kellem. It was a pleasure to get her insights. Vision in Action Live podcasts include presentations of important material from lifelong fulfillment and interviews of subject matter experts and people leading self-directed lives. Vision in Action Live podcasts are every week, and we announce them in advance. Thanks for tuning in. We certainly hope you found it helpful in your own life. Check out the Working Your Plan newsletter, the book Lifelong Fulfillment, collateral materials, and this podcast at lifelongfulfillment.com. I'm Jim Boswell. I'm your host. Comments and questions on the podcast or the book are all welcome at the website and at jim@lifelongfulfillment.com. Thanks so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you again at Lifelong Fulfillment and Vision in Action Live.